track of your contractions. In the meantime, Marvin is sleeping. And so I got all that done, and I remember I set the table for breakfast. And then about, I think about 4 or 5 o'clock, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke your father very carefully. And I said, Marvin, I think we have to go to the hospital. He said, why?
Why?
I said, because I'm having contractions, and they were coming regularly, about, at that point, about every 15 minutes. And they got pretty strong every 15 minutes, and then in between contractions, absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, I even dozed in between contractions. And he said, but it's too early, you're not due yet, you're not due yet. And I said, it's all right, I think we had better go. So Marvin, of course, followed his regular morning routine, and he started to shave. So he couldn't take me to the hospital without shaving. I said, what are you doing? I'm shaving. I said, oh.
Well, you had painted toenails.
Okay. As soon as you're through shaving, do you think we can go to the hospital? So we did, and as I recall, at that point we called my folks home, and I think my father went to the hospital with him. They are taking me to the hospital, and then I go in, and the contractions ease, but Dr. Reitman, whom I adored, was a very nice OB, and they started taking measurements because I was early, and they determined that the baby was going to be small. So they said, how about
Pinhead.
holding off? No, Henry was the pinhead. I said, how about, he said, you know, we'd like to hold off on medication as much as possible because she is small, and we don't want to cause any depression of the
Head?
no,
the signs,
respiratory, of air, you know, that
vital signs.
vital signs, because any medication that enters the mother also.
Boy, we're going to go through each birth.
No, they're not all that dramatic. They're not all that
Then-
dramatic.
was first, she
This
didn't
is
know what was
because she
happening.
this is because she was the first,
Yeah,
you know, and she
also
was early.
Yeah, I was small.
And finally, about 2 o'clock that afternoon, I mean, everything got very quiet. I mean, the contractions, and I would go to sleep in between contractions, and right up until about the time of delivery, I did not have any medication. And then she was 4 pounds and 6 ounces.
Can you believe it?
Adorable, but only 16 inches long, and as a result, she didn't look all scrawny. Because I can remember when my kid brother was born, he weighed 5 pounds, but he was long, and he was looked like a little red rat. And Beth was very, very beautiful because she was only 16 inches long, so that although she was only 4 pounds, you know, it was distributed very nicely. And I remember Dr. Reitman held her in his hand like this. And he said, see? Oh boy. Anyway, because she was premature, but not immature, she had to go into the premature nursery. What'd you say? What did she say?
That immature happened later.
Right. Well, fortunately, although she was 5 weeks early, her lungs were fully developed, which is the real thing, the danger that usually faces premature children, is that that hyaline membrane becomes a real problem. But that was not fortunately, that was not the problem. But I had to leave the hospital without her because they would not release an infant until they weighed 5 pounds. Now that was probably the most frustrating period that I can remember, leaving the baby in the hospital. And then because we lived in a second-story apartment, I couldn't even go up and down the stairs to visit her every day. And that was very difficult. Then finally the Sunday that I was able to, or the Saturday that I was able to leave the house and visit her in the hospital, she was 5 pounds and she looked gorgeous and everybody was all excited. And I went home and I said, well, they have to wait for the doctor to release her.
How long was Beth in the hospital?
Actually, not terribly long. I think about, let's see, from the day she was born, probably 10 days maximum.
Wow.
Well, because there's always some birth weight loss.
So you were there with her for probably 5 days.
Yeah,
Wow.
right. And then, so it meant at least another 5 days that she was in the hospital. And I remember I expected them to call call me to come and get her, and there was no telephone call, and I think it was on a Saturday or a Sunday, because Dr. Dembo was out of town.
The
at a wedding.
pediatrician.
The pediatrician. They would not release her from the hospital until the pediatrician signed the release. Well, I could not understand why they weren't calling us. I expected to be called at 6 o'clock in the morning to come and get her. And I was at home waiting for that telephone call to the hospital. Marvin was at work, so it had to be a Saturday. So it may have been 2 weeks altogether, I think, that she was there. And I remember my mother calling me, and then Marvin's mother would call. Well, did you get a call yet? So I knew something was wrong. Something was wrong. I knew it. They weren't telling me. And then my mother called again, and I got hysterical. I said, "Don't call me anymore. Something's wrong. You're not calling me to come and get my baby." And I started to cry. I mean, I got hysterical. And not only that, but that day in the newspaper, there was an article that it had been discovered that premature babies often were blinded because so much oxygen was given to them.
That was reassuring at the time.
And I hid the article from Marvin, and Marvin hid the article from me. We both lost the newspaper, that page of the newspaper. What had was kind of an interesting thing. What had happened is that they were checking on there were a couple of doctors who were doing some research on what happens to premature babies, and something came up in their research that had nothing to do with the thing that they're searching for, but it spiked that children born in rural areas prematurely had a much lower incidence of blindness than children born in the urban areas at the best hospitals. And the reason they ultimately went into why did this happen, and the reason was that the heavy use of oxygen, of pure oxygen, didn't occur in rural areas. And therefore, that's why children in the cities tended to be blinded, whereas preemies in the rural area.
Something written apathy.
Oh yes, and anyway that day so with all of anyway she came home and it was great and I loved it. And we had that
Did
little.
you get sick and you couldn't be with her and you broke your foot or something?
No,
No, that
that
was
was
Ben.
Benjamin.